This is a really, really big moment, and would like to welcome all of you. My name is David Kaiza, although this for some time I've been writing as AKO Kaiza. And I'm here with my very, very good friend and preeminent African writer who absolutely needs no introduction, but for the sake of form, I will introduce Doreen Baingana. You're welcome. Right. We'd like to give thanks to Ibua Publication for hosting this event. The event we are hosting today is a very, very important one, I think, in the life of African writing, but also particularly since we're Uganda, also in the life of Ugandan literature, because for the first time in the history of the Caine Prize, we are having what do you want to call it, a double nomination? Yes. Of almost triple, but double in the sense that one of the shortlisted stories for the AKO Caine Prize 2001, Lucky, written by Doreen, has also been published by a Ugandan publisher, yes, Ibua Publication. This is a very, very big moment, very big occasion. Yes.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
Also, we have another nominee who is Ugandan, Irene Tushabe.
Yes, yes.
She's Canadian Ugandan. So that's another big moment for us.
Who has been, I think, a shortlisted story is A Separation.
Yes.
Yes, yes. I will come shortly to the shortlisted nominees. I just want to introduce Doreen. Doreen absolutely needs no introduction to the people who read books about Africa and books by Africans. We've all heard of Tropical Fish, Tales from Entebbe. And we are speaking from Entebbe right now. Doreen is no newcomer to the Caine Prize. You have been nominated for the Caine Prize twice before, in 2004 and 2005. But now you're not just a newcomer to nominations of the Caine Prize, but also to prizes generally.
Yes, I can say that. Yes.
Trying
to be modest.
That's why I'm here for. Right. I don't need to be modest about your achievements because they are really very inspiring. The first time I heard of Doreen was because she had won a prize.
Thank you.
I mean, nobody needs a bigger introduction than that. And the prize you had won was the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for the Africa region in 2006. But before that, in 2003, your short story, Tropical Fish, had also won a prize, which is the Grace Fale, I don't know if I pronounce it properly.
The Grace Paley Short Story Prize.
In 2003.
Yes.
Okay.
2004? No, 2003, then it was, yeah, then I...
It was a very busy period. 2003, a prize. 2004, a nomination. 2005, a nomination. 2006, prize. Okay. First of all, how have you been in this past few months, very, very trying times as a writer?
It has been very strange, and I mean, by the grace of God, I am healthy and my family is healthy, so I'm grateful for that. And I've been working from home for the last many years, so in terms of the actual work environment, not very much changed because I've been working from home, except I had my son with me all the time. So doing the new homeschooling thing. So that was the difference. But of course, that tension in the air, knowing there is this, invisible thing spreading and killing people. It's a very weird time to write in because you wonder about the value of writing.
Yes, yes.
Should we really be making up these stories when life needs to be dealt with?
I mean, it kind of, the pandemic itself, there we go, I've pronounced the P word. The pandemic itself kind of, it threw a curveball at everybody. You begin questioning yourself, why am I doing this? Exactly. So in your case, I suppose the self-interrogation happened. Why are you writing?
Why am I writing? I realized then that one has to keep doing what one does. And it's almost, to use a phrase from theater, the show must go on.
The show must go on.
Yes, because what you do, you can't sit, you just can't sit. I couldn't help in the pandemic. I'm not a medic, I'm not a health person, so there's nothing really positive I could do in that vein. So the best thing I could do is perhaps use my gifts such as they are and see if I can leave a mark in case I am to leave sooner than later. Luckily, we are in a profession where if we are lucky enough, we leave something behind. So that's what makes it valuable.
And obviously you did something great, because in the moment of writing, you published something and you've been shortlisted. And when I heard about it, you know, I had this flare of hope and inspiration. I was very, very happy. You know, like out of these dark times, something like this has happened. So as a writer, you did something, you inspired people through these dark times.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
my pleasure.
That's nice.
Well, having said that, I mean, in keeping with the times we are here, we are on Zoom. You know, we don't have a physical audience. This wasn't always the case before. No. When you were nominated for the Caine Prize in 2004, 2005, what was it like? You didn't sit behind, you didn't sit in front of a camera and speak through a tube. It was a big event. It was
a world away from the situation now. 2004, 2005, the prize was still young. It started in 2000. I was living in the United States at that time, and we were flown to London, and all the events were happening in London, as everybody knows. So it was a very in the room physical event, actually meeting people, getting to know new people. And it was very exciting for me, because I think that was when I was introduced in a large way to an African audience. Even though it happened in London, but I think that was a time when most Africans got to know about my writing. It was also at the beginning of my writing career. It was also how I made friends with people like Binyavanga Wainaina. He came for one of the ceremonies. I was nominated that year, the first time around, with Monica
Raj.
Yes, Monica Raj. I met Chika Unigwe, Pasalelo Kantai, people who, you know, we became friends. And also it was a very exciting time, I think, for African writers. It was almost like we were coming out of a very silent time. There had been a kind of a, I don't know if you call it a valley, or maybe a recession in African writing in the 1980s and 1990s. It was not as vibrant as, let's say, the 60s and early 70s.
I mean, this is very interesting. I mean, we absolutely have to give a shout out to the people at Caine Prize. Hello, Caine Prize.
Caine Prize people.
I mean, yeah. I say this because the Caine Prize itself, in one way or the other, has been synonymous with the resurgence in African writing. And I think they have contributed a great deal to this buzz. I mean, every year there is this event.
Yes.
And this year we're taking part in it.
Yes.
Yeah, so, well, and then in 2006, when you got your, when you got the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, you went halfway around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That was amazing. We went to Melbourne, Australia. The announcement for the winner, the general winner, at that time there was also a novel.
Yes.
There were two different prizes. There was a novel and then there was a short story. We went all the way to Melbourne. Just, you know, that's when we saw really how big the Commonwealth Prize was. It was together with the Commonwealth Games.
Yes.
And it was just wonderful to see the breadth of writing in the English language, and how writers from all over the globe are enriching the English language, to be honest.
And of course, I have to mention also, just as a matter of information, that the Caine Prize itself came to Uganda a few years ago, and the Commonwealth Prize was also held in Uganda a few years ago, which at the time, I mean, struck me as a affirmation of how far we had been working very hard. And this one is even, I think, a big affirmation of how hard Ugandan writing and literature has been going. Yes, I mean, I said before that we began by talking about how isolated and dark and fearful the times we are living in. I mean, I don't know for which generation of people this would seem unprecedented. But I think for the last time a pandemic of this sort happened was more than a century ago, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Although when you're talking about fear and living in isolation, for Ugandans of a certain generation, it is nothing, not terribly new. And it just so happens that your story, which has been shortlisted, the title you'll explain to us, you know, when I saw the title, Lucky, I said, okay, Lucky. But I read the story, and would I be right in saying there's something darkly satirical about the title?
Yes, indeed, you are spot on. It's a dark story. It's a sad story. It's available online, so I think we can give a few spoilers. And I thought I could juxtapose the title, in that because it's about the irony of life.
Yes,
is that we are all going to die, and the story is about death. So,
well, lucky us.
Lucky us.
Yes. Yes.
But also in the story, there's this sort of generational gap, if you will, between how the boys talk and how they see the teacher talking, and how the teacher always pretends to be the authoritative one, to be in the know, always telling them, you know, you're lucky, you're lucky. This is the situation you're in, when they can see very clearly in reality that they are not. So
I mean, that is really quite impressive, because for me the idea of luck, as your short story defines it, it speaks to something. It's almost a kind of I don't want to call it the premise of the book itself, of this. I think there's a reason why my tongue slipped and I said book when I should have been saying short story. But I think that Freudian slip will be explained shortly.
Sure.
Let me come from a bit of a distance in this. That years ago, when I was working as an editor at Kwani, you know, we had a short story competition. Really, it was really quite a great event. But so we sent a call out.
Yes. And
then we got a flood of stories.
Yeah.
I mean, upwards of 800. So, wow. You know, the process of selecting, the process, I think a lot of writers, maybe great majority of readers, maybe some few writers may know what it takes, actually the process of creating the prize giving moment.
Yes.
I mean, you have this huge collection of material that is sent in. And then I think a subcommittee of some sort sits in and sieves through it and creates a long list. And this long list is then handed over, presumably, maybe others do it differently, to another committee that works, that slogs through the long list to produce the short list. And the process, from my memory, was that we got in upwards of 800 stories. I mean, to make it to a long list is an achievement in itself.
Yes. And that was Kenya alone?
No, it wasn't. Well,
East Africa?
It was open to Africa.
Ah, okay.
It was open to Africa.
Okay.
But it had been restricted to writers under 28.
Oh, I see.
But still, you got that. And the point I'm making is that, I mean, these 800 stories were all of very, very high quality.
Wow.
So to even begin picking a long list, which I think came to roughly, I don't know what, about 10% of the overall stories sent in, maybe a little bit upwards of 10% of the stories sent in. Still, they were very, very high quality. And I remember some of the things that myself and Billy Kahora,
yes.
Hello Billy, if you're here with us, yeah, a very, very great friend of writing, was that, I mean, many things you look out for, but one of the things that you were looking out for to collect the stories, the command of the narrative itself. Is the writer in command of the elements? I mean, there's so many things, but command, I think you can unpack it and say so many things about it.
Yeah.
You know, the confidence with which story is written, but also the command of narrative. Now, I think the stories that really squeaked through the long list to become the short list, there's always something inside that they all had. And I find that there in Lucky, that the writer, yourself as Doreen, I mean, reading through Tropical Fish and your other stories, is that you kind of rise above, not above the writing itself. You are with the writing, but you know, the narrative elements and all of that, and you begin to look at life from a meta from a certain you rise a few inches above the page, so to speak. And for me, this is the concept of lucky, that it's a premise, but it's also almost a philosophy of sorts, and asking us to reflect on the wider meaning of what it means. I mean, we say that these are times of isolation and fear, but your story, though it is set in war, it is so apt to the times itself.
Yeah.
Was this deliberate, or it's just a coincidence of
No, it was, I think, coincidental, because I wrote it as an extract of a novel I am just about to finish, so that was long before, and it was published in January. So, but I always think there's something in the air that resonates, and maybe it's our human mind that makes these connections rather than the reality actually is connected. Right. Maybe it's just the way we think that we see these connections after the fact. But the truth is, Uganda itself has been through many dark and unusual times, and perhaps that is always in the back of our minds, even when we are celebrating things, birthdays, births, weddings. I don't think we can completely escape history and the weight of that. And I think it's for us writers to go back and delve into the suppressed issues or the historical issues. We tap into that to talk about, to reflect on our way of being, So I don't know if that could have been a coincidence, but I feel as if it's in the air.
Right.
I don't think we can escape our past. That, who said the past is always present? I think it was, I forget, an American writer. Anyway.
Right.
That's what the story, I think, is about, even though it's about, it is set 20 years ago. 1987 is 20 years ago or 30 years ago?
Almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's about time we let the story speak for itself.
Okay.
Just before we get there, okay. I'll just say a part which I think I'll ask you to read, because it doesn't give away the story, but it it's exciting enough, because the part I'm going to ask you to read is where the narrator is having a flashback in a moment of crisis, but a flashback which I think speaks about the history of violence, but also contextualizes Uganda as a former colony. That is also connected to another crisis of the Second World War and what that meant. I mean, I think for the readers, that is something to read and think about. You know, I'm not giving cues about how the book should be read, but yes. While you look for that, I would like to say, much as this is a story of war, W-A-R, but also W-O-E, both of them. You tell it in and I think this is what the gift that you bring as a writer, as Doreen, from my point of view, that you don't tell a sentimental story sentimentally. In fact, there's a very cheerful tone here, which is the first thing you see, and then you begin reading. My God, actually, it is not a story about cheerfulness. The characters we meet in this short story are Ochiti. There's an old man called Okiror. There is Tim, there is Bosco, but there's also Komakech, or Koma. And the part I want you to read begins sort of somewhere almost in the middle of the narrative. And I think this is where there's been an attack of some sort. But please take it away. And this is where our character is beginning to introduce Mzee Okiror.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And just to say quickly, thank you for that setting up of the story. These are boys in a school that are left behind because there is a war going on and everybody else has left, but they cannot go because they are cut off from their home areas. And the narrator is a young boy who has no name. I shut my eyes and force escape to Muzee's stories. Ask me the name of any gun: Beretta 92, AK-47, AKM, AK-74, Type 56. What hadn't I learnt from Mzee Okiror The deacons had tried to chase him away from outside St. Mark's, but he was a fixture, like the monster marabou storks that we screamed and threw stones at. They would squawk and swap up and away, but hover in trees nearby and soon return, landing like clumsy helicopters. Mzee Okiror would aim his rifle at one of them, his eyes so wrinkled they seemed shut, gun trembling in his gnarled hands. We waited, holding on to each other. Ah, they are just birds. Me, I kill people. And he stretched open his mouth with silent laughter, exposing rosy gaps, saliva dribbling as he beat his skinny thigh. Every single time we waited breathlessly for the shot, and every time, somehow, he fooled us. And we stamped our feet, annoyed. You Mzee, we shall report you. Old Okiro made up for this by letting us watch as he opened his gun lovingly and polished it, rubbing each section with a dark, oily cloth, holding it delicately close, like an injured child. It seemed alive to me, like the metal breathed, even as it could stop breath. I remained by Mzee's side for hours in the idle holiday afternoons, long after the other boys had got bored and run off. Mzee had stories. It seems he had fought in every army. One day he would say he was with the African Rifles of World War II, fighting for the British in Burma, wherever that was. Then next, the colonial army had to pacify the Karamojong. He said the word in English, explaining, you know them, they never want to be ruled by anybody, let alone whites. That's when he came back with lots of cows and got his first wife. Then the next time he said he took part in the attack on the Buganda King's Palace in Kampala in 1966. Then later he volunteered with the SPLA in Sudan in the 1980s and even later trained the UNLA to fight the NRA. When I told my mother, breathless, counting the armies on my fingers, she chewed her teeth. What a bunch of lies. That Mzee was in Amin's army and survived it with nothing, not even his teeth. Do you think he has a brain left? I think I could stop there.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, within that short excerpt that you read, I mean, I think all the elements that I love about your work is there. First of all, your metaphors, you know, the marabou stork landing like a helicopter, but also the humor amidst all of this. I mean, it's there's a lot of humor in this short story, isn't there? Which, in a sense, is how can I say? When people think about Africa and war, you know, the images we get, you know, it's not like this. These people are lively. They know how to get along.
Yes, yes. I think humor is something. I knew that the story was going to be very heavy and serious. It's about serious things. But the humor is a great way for, first of all, just the juxtaposition. When you as a reader are feeling both really terrible and yet you're laughing, I thought it's something, an effect I would like to create. But also it's a way to enter the material, because sometimes if you feel as a reader that you're being told to feel so sad, you resist it a little. But it's very hard to resist humor. So you open yourself to what the story has to say. But the fact is, people living their lives every day are not living their lives as though all the other facets of human emotion are shut down.
Absolutely.
No, they are full human beings with a whole range of emotions. And the way he could make a joke, I kill people. And
yes. They're just birds. I kill people.
Yes, as a badge of honor. But also it's a coping mechanism.
Yes, absolutely.
Humor is a coping mechanism. There are some times where there's a phrase, you have to laugh so as not to cry. Absolutely.
I mean, and as somebody who's been almost in similar circumstances, you know, in a war zone, trapped in a school, I mean, I mean, I come from northern Uganda myself. We'll talk shortly about the book from which this story is taken before we hand over to Kangere in the studio to moderate with the people who are in the audience. Is that humor is very much a part of suffering.
Yes.
In an almost ironic way. And there are all kinds of places that have taken their names from the kind of, I don't know if it's mock humor, but it does really say something about Africans themselves, that the portrayal of Africans out there is well, it's already negative, but it's almost as if our subjectivity is taken away from us as black people, facing suffering, and nothing is going on. We are presenting in a one-dimensional way.
Exactly.
And if you as a black person are telling the stories of black people, this is the sort of thing that comes out.
Yeah.
And I relate to it.
Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to say something really quick. I don't know. I'm going to quote a Trevor Noah joke.
Please go ahead.
Which
I love Trevor Noah.
Yes. He was talking about how in late night TV, especially in the US, that's when they put on these videos about the really starving Africans or starving, brown and black people around the world, and they're sitting there and they have flies in their eyes and they're looking completely despicable. And Trevor said, Noah was wondering, why don't they just go like this?
Right, just
the flies. They're made as if they can't even just swat away the flies. And so at the very end, I felt the boy had to do something to remove the flies that were gathering from the dead body, inspired by that, because I felt no spoiler alert, of course. I think most people by now have read the story. They are all books online. So I think that was a very great way of putting it.
Oh, thank you very much.
You remain human even through whatever you're going through. Thank you very much.
Well, just to recap, for those of you who are just joining us now, I'm David Kaiza, or AKO Kaiza, the way I write these days. Haven't used the name David in a long time.
AKO Kaiza.
I'm speaking with our very eminent writer, Doreen Baingana, the author of Tropical Fish, whose short story, Lucky, is one of the 5 that have been shortlisted for the AKO Caine Prize 2001. 2020. I'm wishing I was young again.
2021.
Well, that just goes to say how long the Caine Prize has been around. For 2021. Well, thank you for that. The nominees are Doreen Baingana for Uganda, Lucky, and published in a Boa journal, online in Kampala. I think there's a link online where you can get these stories. Another writer, Meron Hadero from Ethiopia, is also on the short list for the story The Street Sweep, published in ZYZZYVA in Ethiopia, 2018. A third nominee is Remy Ngamije. I hope that's the right pronunciation, from Namibia, for the story The Giver of Nicknames. I just love these titles. Published in Lolwe, a magazine in Kenya, in 2020. And a fourth is Troy Onyango, also Kenya, for his story This Little Light of Mine. You feel like breaking into song, right? This Little Light of Mine. Published in Duke Literary Magazine in Namibia. This is very interesting. The Kenyan story is published in Namibia. This is
it's almost as if they planned it.
Pan-Africanism in action.
Yes.
Brought to you by Caine Prize. And
because Troy runs Lolwe and Remy Ngamije, I think is how it's pronounced, runs Duke in Namibia.
This is networking.
I'm telling you. To the very
well, congratulations to Troy and to Remy and to Doreen and to Meron. And the last nominee is Irene Tushabe, also a Ugandan, for the story Separation, published in Exile Quarterly in Canada, 2018. Yes. Thank you. And I would like
a small correction.
Oh, please.
Meron's story, Ziziva, I think, is an American journal.
Right. Okay.
She's an Ethiopian American.
Oh, my bad. Okay. Oh, thank you very much. We'll hand over to Kangere, who is going to be moderating conversations further. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kangere.
Hello, Kaiza. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, perfect. So in the Q&A, we've got one question from Beverly Nambozo.
Yes.
Thanks for the meaningful discussion. How do you think the author's reputation affects their work and acceptance? For example, Pablo Neruda and accusations of rape. This response will offer guidance into this matter as readers, creators, and writers. So as you're taking this question, I will encourage anybody else who has a question to just raise their hand, and then the admin will promote you to panel so that you can ask your question directly.
Could you please repeat the specific question? Sorry, it wasn't very clear.
The specific question from Beverly Nambozo.
Yes.
Okay, the question was, how do you think an author's reputation affects their work and acceptance? For example, Pablo Neruda and accusations of rape. This response will offer guidance into this matter as readers, creators, and writers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. I think he's asking how prizes affect the writer's writing thereafter. I didn't see the connection with Pablo Neruda. I didn't hear it.
Well, from what I heard, you, Kangere, please correct us if we didn't hear properly. Was that how do you think that a writer's reputation affects the choice of their work? Okay.
The choice of how they write.
I mean, is this like if you are a reputable writer and you've maybe submitted your work to a prize committee? Is that something like that?
Oh, that's from the judge's perspective.
Is that from the judge's perspective?
It's a very complex question. We hope we've got it right, Beverly. Beverly, thank you for that question. I hope we've got the gist of it right.
Beverly, of course, is a very energetic Ugandan poet and writer.
Yes.
Very well known, needs no introduction.
Hi, yes. Beverly. I'll just speak for myself and say earlier on when I wrote my first book, I had no reputation. So it didn't affect the writing at all. And in fact, it was a nice anonymous space, if I may say. You're really free to do whatever it is that you want to do because you have no public face. And the only, of course, there are other fears that you have at that time. Is this writing any good? Should I really call myself a writer? And then after you've got some recognition, at least for me, then there comes sort of a challenge. Can I keep this up? Was that a fluke? Is it really as good as they say it is? I just need to work on building the confidence. This time around, I had been working with a novel for a very long time, which we'll talk about, and I had sent it out and got some rejections, which was a bit dampening. But receiving this nomination was an affirmation that there's something I'm doing right in the novel, and perhaps, you know, I still have the talent and skill that I was lauded for. As for the judging, we just have to trust that they're actually swayed by the writing itself, because we have a mix of many new writers and others who perhaps may be better known.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I hope that answers the question.
Well, I can get it back to you.
Yes, so Beverly would like to come in. We're just trying to upgrade her so that she can speak.
Okay.
Okay, so Beverly, you have talking rights now. Please unmute.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the way Doreen answered, by the way. She answered something else that came to light.
Oops, Beverly's voice has gone.
Poems in his collection actually talk about the physical act where a woman who was abused by him sexually was on top of her. He really explained it graphically in one of his poems. How does this affect the way you respond to people's work. Because when I traveled somewhere and I spoke to a really fabulous Indian author, and we were talking about people's works, and I said, but how about Pablo Neruda? He was accused of rape. This is what the Indian author said. He said, no, it doesn't matter. His work is excellent. Whatever he did does not affect the quality of his work. He's a great writer. That's all we need to know. So my question was about that. I do appreciate what Doreen said about growing from, so to speak, insignificance to significance. That was important. However, that was my question. I hope that's clearer now. Again, appreciation. Yes.
Yes, it is, Bev. I've got it now. The reputation of a writer and how we should receive their work. That's a very difficult question. My very first, and I think has been talked about, a lot of very esteemed artists out there, filmmakers who have done great work, but their personal lives have not been as admirable. My very first instinct is I want to look at the work. My very first instinct is I just want to look at the work and take the work on its own, the work should be valued for what it is. That would be my very first instinct. But I know life is much more complicated, because in the end we tend not to applaud or enjoy the work. We start to applaud and look up to the artist. So that's where the problem comes in. If we just stuck to appreciating someone's work, it would be fine. In the end, we appreciate and sometimes even idolize the artist. So then we have to say, a good example is, an extreme example that everybody can relate to, is that Hitler was a vegetarian and loved animals. Did it make him, therefore, should we not look at his atrocities? Of course not. There are some things that then make me like the work less. Because why do we write? What are we trying to say? We are trying to explain humanity. We are trying to pose moral questions, actually, in our work. And if the person who is posing a moral question has stuff in their life that is quite immoral, then you have to step back and say, gosh, I don't think I can admire this person's work anymore.
I mean, can you trust their word anymore? Like,
yes. I mean, I could always say, well, it's fiction.
In their work. Yes.
Another example is sorry to bring up, like Bill Cosby, who's in his work in the Bill Cosby show was a father figure, a doctor, a role model, and then to find out that he had been accused of and found guilty of makes you, I shouldn't have brought up his name because it's so complicated, makes you then say, no, I think we really need to hold artists accountable. We need to hold, because you are held up as role models, right? People look at you, people give their books to their children. Read this. This person has achieved something in their life. And so you cannot ignore the other side, which is not as shiny. So I think, yes, with that long thoughtful process, I would say it is important, not that all artists are saints, artists are human, but I think that what they do should also be critiqued.
Well, thank you very much, Kangere. Well, I mean, while we wait for more questions to come in, I would like to mention, of course, I mean, the question from Beverly, this is really the key issue of our times, what others are beginning to call cancel culture, that you must account for yourself.
As we wait, but we don't lose the...
Okay.
Kaiza, Doreen, are you with us?
Yes, we are here.
We are with you.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So Beverly, thank you for answering the question very, very well. She was happy with your answer, Doreen. As we cue David Jack to steam in, This is a question that he posted in the Q&A. How has the lockdown affected your creativity? Has it been freeing, or do you find that it has been harder to be creative?
That's a very good question, because I think it's something we are all facing. It's something we're all facing, and we had touched on a little bit earlier. And I'll be honest with you and say it doesn't directly affect my creativity. After questioning whether what I do has value, and my answer is that it still has value, because as long as we are alive, and for me, as long as I breathe, I want to write and I want to create. But also, in a way, writing is an escape from my reality, because it's like you go into this other room or this other space in your mind, in your imagination, and that's where you dwell as you create. So in fact, it has been kind of a relief to not always have to be in this real world with all the things we can't control, with the deaths of loved ones. Last week, I lost a close cousin.
Oh, sorry, so sorry.
Yeah. So, and just knowing people are losing people are sick, the country is in crisis, the globe is in crisis. And then I'm given some relief. Maybe it's selfish, and it's a privilege, in fact, that I can take a few hours off and enter into my world. There's always this image that I remember Toni Morrison said in one interview. She wakes up early in the morning and then goes down to her basement and enters another world. I just love that. And I feel that's those of us who are lucky enough to be able to write, and I'm very lucky that I'm still able to earn a living during this hard time, which has been hard for many artists, that I still have work to do.
Well, in terms of creativity, you get ideas. I mean, you have the rhythm of the writing itself.
Yes.
But about the writing itself, how does it trigger your imagination, if it does?
The pandemic, or just in general?
The lockdown.
Oh, the lockdown. I think because I was working on a project that still trying to do the final version of my draft, that is historical fiction. So I wasn't specifically thinking about the pandemic. I was trying not to think about the pandemic.
Right.
So it didn't directly trigger material. It was just a reason to get away from what was happening.
Right.
Yeah. So.
I mean, that is the other side of it, that you have to be able to filter the world out in order to focus on your writing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I must say it was a bit difficult when, this is now with the playwriting that I've also been doing at this time, because Ugandan Foundation, Tebere Arts Foundation, picked up the title story of my short story collection. It's being adapted to stage.
Oh, wow.
And that was affected by the pandemic, because we were supposed to meet in rooms together with the actor, director, work on what we need to do, and that has been hampered. The uncertainty, in terms of trying to create a schedule and just keeping on with it when there's a lockdown, then there's no lockdown. It's really, everything's up in the air. And so it has been very hard for the show to keep going on in that sense, for more collaborative work.
Okay. Thank you, Kangere. Do we have more questions?
We have one from social media from Rachel Kaiza. She's asking what is, just hold on, let me get it clearly. What is the role of prizes in writing? Does it matter whether a writer submits a story or not? And that's the last question that we have coming in.
Okay.
What is the role of prizes in writing? A very good question.
And does it matter with a writer?
And does it matter whether a writer submits or not?
Yeah. Well, writing is a career. It's a career, and you want to keep growing as a writer, and prizes do help especially to get you in touch with a bigger and wider audience. So I'm really grateful that there are such things as prizes to help individual writers not just talk to themselves in their writing, but actually get out there in the world. So, for example, like I mentioned before, I was writing my short stories. I was in the US at that time and not really known in Uganda or other places, publishing in small literary magazines, but the Caine Prize helped me get a reputation on the continent, because it was a prize watched by people on the continent. So that helped me a lot. And it was a vehicle towards my getting published in West Africa by Cassava Republic and in South Africa by an imprint at that time that has since closed. So it actually led to further publication. That was really great. And then also the Commonwealth Prize helped again the following year, winning the Commonwealth Prize for first book. So I would encourage writers to submit their work. You can start with the smaller competitions if you're still new, to see if you can win those. Of course, the chances are, it's almost like the roll of the dice. My advice would be, don't spend your money on the prizes that charge large entry fees. Because I know sometimes it's a way for literary magazines to just survive. They have these prizes and then everybody has to pay $20 to get in, which is a lot of money for us here, and then they choose only one winner.
Yes, yes.
So
there has to be one winner.
There has to be one winner. Mm-hmm. So I would recommend that, yes, submit your work, but try and choose those that aren't so exorbitantly priced. But we have, I think, the short story day in Africa. What is it called? I shouldn't have mentioned it unless I was sure.
Well, I'm sure everybody's on Google for that now.
Yeah, okay, please Google.
Yes, yes.
That's one of the premier short story African prizes on the continent, and other smaller magazines at different locations have different prices.
Yes, yes.
But yes, I highly encourage. Prizes are good.
I mean, writing itself. Thank you very much, Kangere. We will have another conversation. I think we're going to the process of writing itself with you and how you did the research for this. And I think Lucky is an excerpt from a fully grown manuscript now. You tell us about that.
Yes.
But just on that, I mean, writing itself is a very lonely craft.
Yes.
And prizes like this drum up attention.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people have been going online to find out what the Caine Prize is about.
Yes. Yes.
So would you say they are absolutely positive for writing?
They're positive. They're positive. They even the controversies around the prize help publicize the writers with the aim of not just being famous, but getting an audience, getting read. You want to communicate, right? That's what you're trying to do. So my novel, thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you very much, Kangeria.
Tongues of Fire. It was an idea in my mind for a very long time to write about Alice Lakwena, who led a rebel movement. She was called Alice Auma. She led a rebel movement in northern Uganda. She's from Gulu in 1986, 1987. And she believed she was anointed by the Holy Spirit to cleanse Uganda of evil, and she used unconventional weapons like holy oil, holy stones, grenades, prayer. So she mixed traditional and Christian beliefs to motivate her soldiers. So I was very, very intrigued by this lady, and I felt it was really the stuff for fiction. I knew I wouldn't adequately, completely record the history of that time, but I thought I would use this particular story of hers to see what I could explore in fiction. So I published a short story or two. There were a few chapters, and then again, awards. I received the inaugural Miles Morland Scholarship for African Writers, which is a great one, where you're supported for a whole year to write your manuscript. So I must thank the Miles Morland Foundation, because it helped me write the full first draft without having to worry about.
Which is another useful thing for prizes, because prizes of many kinds.
Yes. Yes,
that
so
was a prize to help you in the process of writing.
Yes, yes, and it was also it's getting more and more highly competitive. They get quite a lot of entries. So then there was a chapter that, so there was a chapter that I felt could be standalone. I felt I should also explore the innocent bystanders. As they say, you know, when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. So I was thinking about the other people who may not be directly involved. And a very good friend of mine told me that they got stuck at school during this war and the army passed through. And then I was like, oh, that image was very, very evocative. And I built a story around that.
Well, I mean...
I should note that I too was stuck at school in the Amin War.
I mean, it is a recurring theme, isn't it?
Yes.
When war breaks out,
yes.
Kids are stuck at school.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost a subgenre in itself, because it's a subgenre of the war novel. But
there was one by Ben Okri.
Ben Okri.
Yes.
What was the title?
I think the collection is called Incidents at the Shrine. I have it here. I don't know if that particular story was called Incidents at the Shrine, but it's a lovely story collection published in 1986. Wonderful stories.
Right. The substance of your novel, the one you're working on, you know, whose working title, I presume, is the one called Tongues of Fire.
Yes.
It combines the historical novel, because Alice Lakwena is a historical figure who existed in actual fact, with a war. So there's also dipping its foot into the very long history of war novels. Yes. But also, I mean, this was a very, very fascinating figure, Alice Lakwena. And of course, the war, the Northern War was itself one of the big news items in the world for over 30 years. Very, very violent war. And it was also described as child-centered war, which makes this extract very appropriate. Yeah, but it was also a very complex war. And it, I think one scholar, researcher called Chris Dolan, who I think worked at the Uganda Refugee Law Project for a while, who wrote a book. And in his book, he said that this war had its three phases. He says there was a first phase, a second phase, and a third phase. And from what you've told me, this is the early, the first phase of the war, so to speak, the pre-Joseph Kony phase of the war, which you focused on. Now, I just want to get into the craft of writing. Maybe, I don't know how much readers know this, but writers do carry out an awful a lot of research. You know, how did you carry out the research for this? Okay,
so first of all, I feel, you know, to call it the pre-Kony war, phase of the war. Yeah, phase of the war is, if you look at it from the point of view of Alice and the people at that time, Kony was a nobody.
Yes.
In fact, Kony came to her, as the story goes, and she dismissed him. Apparently, he's some sort of cousin. So I feel as if saying pre-Kony undermines or underrates her own existence, you know?
Sorry about that. An unfortunate word. Well, what I was trying to say was that...
I do understand what you meant.
Absolutely, thank you.
Also, what I want to say is that there was a very big difference in terms of the atrocities.
Yes.
Because, as you know, with the Kony War, he went about, you know, attacking children, and the atrocities were really horrible, abducting. Alice did not do that. I really want to make it clear that even though people died in her war, but she was not doing those kinds of atrocities. Even though has lasted 1 year, she actually really believed in the cause about cleansing Uganda from evil. And not just cleansing Acholi or northern Uganda, she felt the whole country had disobeyed God, and her war was a good war, so in her opinion.
So you could say there's something ideal in her that one can believe in as well.
Yes. Yes.
And so, did you know this before, or you found out during the course of researching for the book?
Before, I didn't know. I just knew her as the figure that was made, that the newspapers made her this kind of almost like a crazy person, you know? And so I was curious, and I wanted to explore and find out more. And I read a book called Alice and the Holy Spirits, which situates her movement in the sort of actually traditional beliefs, sort of not that it's not just someone who sprung out of nowhere, but to base it from the culture and the traditional beliefs she she sprung out of.
And this was a book, I think, published around about 2099, 2000?
I don't remember, but it was by a German anthropologist.
Yes.
I have it here somewhere.
Yes. Well, we are talking about the process of researching a story. If you're writing a story that is grounded in actual history with actual people, how do you go about this? I mean, it's, yes.
There are many different levels of, I think, historical fiction, many different degrees to which someone is relying on history or not. I felt mine was quite light.
Okay.
As in, how much is fiction, how much is based on fact. So I got the general trend and trajectory of the war across northern Uganda, going east,
yes,
and then going south along the eastern border of Uganda, and it ended in Jinja. And so what I did is, after reading that book of anthropology that gave me a lot of the basic facts and dates and what the movement was about, I wrote one first draft. And then I decided to go back and interview. I did interview before the first draft, so I went to the first draft. So I went to Gulu and I interviewed. Of course, Alice has passed away. She died in a refugee camp in Kenya.
In Kakuma.
Yes, I think Turkana. In 1990, so somewhere. I don't remember. But anyway.
In the 2000s.
Oh.
I think, yeah.
Okay, so I talked to her mother, I talked to her father. Her father, Severino, still has a church. So I went and I saw how the spiritual aspects, I gleaned many ideas. I talked to former members of the army. And it was what struck me is that there are some things that I thought I had made up that actually turned out to be true.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there are different phases in the research and different people do it differently, but I decided, let me first write one full draft, because it is clear to me that I am not putting down, I don't want it to be taken as a non-fiction book. This is what happened. No, I really want to focus on the psychological story of the interiority of Alice's mind, which we cannot really know, in fact. Everybody had, when I asked them the opinion of Alice, everybody had a very different opinion. So that's life. How we see someone and how we create someone's character depends on who you are. You know, and that's why I like fiction so much, because it lends itself to that reality that we all make up stories about who that other person is. So this lie that I can write about who she was exactly can't materialize. I mean, I know historians try, but I think that fiction is the ultimate truth, because we are admitting that we cannot really know, and we have made it up.
But it's very interesting that in the process of carrying out this research, you are also living with this person.
Yes.
You almost, I can't say there's a mild meld,
yes,
but how close and how much of a presence does this historical figure you are focusing on live with you?
Well, I have to make it clear that I'm living with the person who I think I know.
Right.
I am living with the person in my imagination. I'm not living with the actual Alice Lakwena.
Well, I
am trying to get as close as possible, but I will not lie myself. The funny thing, her younger sister who I met is called Doreen.
There you have it.
Yes, but there was another lady in the church who I didn't talk to, but how she looked and her movements and her just made me feel as if this would be the person. She just lended more, I guess, artistically to the image, to the person I had in my mind. So I am borrowing some facets from the real person, but I want to emphasize the fictional part of the historical fiction.
As well, absolutely. Yes, it is your story.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we could have this conversation for forever. I mean, it's always very nice speaking to you. In the process also, I mean, you learn things about the country.
Yes.
You learn things about the war. I mean, outside of what you've written in the novel, which you can't give away right now, what stood out for you that you learned that went beyond cliche, that went beyond the lazy newspaper headlines? What truth did you learn about Uganda, if I can use that word loosely?
That truth. That truth is, I think, the war was being fought, and there are two sides of the war, but the people who are actually fighting are not enemies of each other. I think the real people who have a cause to fight, for whom the war is, are the leaders at the top, whether it is the state and whoever's leading this other war. But when you think about it in terms of class, say the peasants who join the rebel army and the other peasants who need jobs and they join the government army, are more alike than they are different, even though they may be told a different story in order to fight.
This is a very, very sad truth.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing I learned, and I don't know how true it is, but to me I almost felt like it was a continuation of tribal wars, pre-colonial tribal wars, that we are still in the process of forging a nation, and we have not got there yet. But they seem to be a sentiment where just, okay, for example, before the British came, the Baganda were fighting with the Banyoro. When the British came, I'm really summarizing it and making it, I'm simplifying it.
Yes.
The Baganda collaborated with the British to help them. One of the main reasons was to help them in their fight with the Banyoro. So for them, they didn't see it as you know, we love the whites. They were just doing their own thing here, and they were like, we can get some guns. And they went ahead and very badly defeated the Banyoro. So I still feel that there is a sense that some of those we have not yet properly cohesed as a nation, and many of the peoples is still quite a level of I hate to use this word, but it's almost like tribal warfare, ethnic warfare, where when one group takes control of the country, it is almost as if they have overcome or vanquished another group, which is very sad, and it is not what a nation should be. But when you look at where resources are going, when you look at who is developing economically, unfortunately it is quite clear it is one region of the country or some regions of the country that are flourishing at the expense of another. So one would not be surprised if, I don't want to name names, if for example the Northern region may feel that they have been invaded and taken over instead of feeling that they are part of Uganda. I really hope we can move away from the way I have narrated it and move closer to becoming a real nation.
I mean, this is the thing about the core. This is the thing that literature really means, isn't it? To lift up the uncomfortable truths of society, the things we don't want to talk about or talk about euphemistically, and put them before everybody else. Yes, I mean, it also
speak the unspeakable.
I mean, we are talking about Uganda here, but we could be talking about any African country, really, isn't it? Yeah. Or any part of the world, for that matter, now. Yeah. And I think, you know, does it not also speak to the collapse of the independence dream, that we have a Pan-African dream of about how we can overcome foreign oppression? But then we didn't have a lot of time out on that. Immediately we collapsed into this other internecine warfare that you're describing.
Yeah, it is. I think we didn't put enough effort in forging a nation, in building a nation. When I think about, you know, the U.S. where I used to live, where every morning every single child has to pledge allegiance to the nation, because they realize that there is a narrative we have to create to make this nation. The nation is a story that you have to keep telling the young people each new, because they know that many of them are new immigrants, whatever. We haven't done anything deliberate to create a sense of being Ugandan, that you can be, yes, I can be a Munyankole and a Ugandan
at the same time.
Yeah, what structures do we have in place? What stories are we telling ourselves? the Ugandan anthem, we can't even believe the words. I love it, but it's a very English tune. I mean, it's made by a Buganda, but I don't want to get
It's not African
track.
music.
Yes.
It is not Rusikelela Africa.
I don't want to get off track, but I really think more efforts, and also people are not dumb. They can see where are resources going, you know, who is benefiting. Are my children getting educated? You know, the very basic things that we want. Is it for the common good? You know, people can see it. So one of the ways that Forge a Nation is also not just in like the national anthems and cultural stuff, but also economically and socially.
And as a writer, I mean, earlier you said that as a writer you felt powerless, that you couldn't contribute anything to fight the pandemic. But is this not an area where writing really matters? That
oh yeah,
that perhaps literature has got the intellectual machinery, you know, arsenal, so to speak to these complex questions.
Oh yes, definitely. When I think of the literature out of South Africa that partly contributed, not alone, but working with other things to bring down apartheid.
Yes.
And even African American literature and the writers, you know, like James Baldwin, just so eloquent in talking about
a very beautiful writer.
Yes, in talking about the situation of the race reality in the United States, and the work still resonates up to now. That yes, we can do that if we can inform ourselves, if we can, and for us here especially, if we can. Writing also tends to be a very middle class thing, so we also have to see how we can get in touch with, should I say, the real people? Okay, with the majority.
Yes.
So that what we write is relevant to the real situation on the ground.
Right.
It's imperative that we begin to publish stories that have our voices very clearly told, have whether we agree with opinions or not, but have be able to state who we are, how we are from our own understanding. A lot of our history is lost, and so there has to be a dedicated unearthing to be even able to understand the different reasons, the different nuances of how we came to be. So yeah, it is definitely our responsibility as writers and publishers to tell as many stories as we can about who we truly are. And it is from that understanding, to quote Doreen again, that if the stories that we tell are able to reflect on our way of being, we are then able to determine for ourselves how we want, and then be able to move forward in that.
Okay, thank you very much. Quite a number of very substantive issues have been raised there, Doreen. Talking about cultural appropriation, but also talking about the country and its history and the colonialism that we cannot run away from. Yes, what do you have to say about these matters?
That's a very large question. I think as a writer, and I would urge other writers and other artists to keep on interrogating these things, to not self-censor, and of course we are living in a climate where we are highly censored, but to keep trying to say the things that need to be said.
I am just like terribly excited, and yeah, it makes me a bit wordy sometimes and less able to keep everything together. But this whole process has just been, as I said, a form of validation, a reminder that that what we are doing has an impact, has value, and we just have to keep going. I really liked the things that Doreen said about reflecting on our way of being, because it just speaks to what we believe and what we have believed at Ibua, and what we believed at the Lantern Meat Foundation, because we're publishing is an enterprise of the Lantern Meat Foundation, which began as a group of poets, you know, just coming together because we wanted to write and tell our poetry, and it grew. We began performing, and then we said, no, we have to publish, and we looked for publishers, and nobody would publish us. It's really wonderful to see that a Ugandan publisher can work for a Ugandan writer, and that for me really speaks to where we want to be. Because at the end of this, we just want to say that there is no need to go away, that who we are is enough and we can provide for ourselves. We'll also be screening time just to, as a way to comment on Moses Serugo's question. We are not unaware that the majority of our people really love film and love theater. And so we are ensuring that our stories can be consumed in as many forms as possible. So screening time, Killing Time will be screened in August, so look out for that. And and our publication will be coming out in August. We'll have another one in December, but for now, August is our current window of publication. We are open to writers across the continent. Please send in your work. Who knows? You might be the next Caine winner, right? But we really want our writers, even the established ones, to consider the young audience that's out there that's really ready to hear from you, because there's a lot to be said for experience. There's a lot to be said for from the knowledge that you bring to the table. So we are really thankful that Doreen considered us, and we are absolutely, over the moon that that her story was shortlisted. And so cross fingers, let's see how it goes.
All right, thank you, Kunihira. So before the administrators boot us out of the call, Doreen, there was a comment from Hilda which had skipped, and I have to read it because this is a very important one. So this is a message from one of your alumni, Doreen, that was sent through FemRite. And she's saying, thank you, Doreen, for offering yourself for the development of writing in Africa. We greatly appreciate you. This is coming from Lisa. She was one of the alumni of the FemRite regional residency, and she really wanted this message to come through to you. Thank you. She's launching her book soon. And she wanted to thank you for your impact on writing through your facilitation.
It's nice to be published at home.
Yes.
And that I have a majority readership from here. And I really enjoyed the back and forth with the editors. It was not too elongated, but it was helpful. And yeah.
Who were the editors you were working with?
Rachel.
Rachel.
Yes. Oh, I should mention her. Thank you, Rachel.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud of being Ugandan in that sense, despite all the negative things I've said about. Yes. Yeah. Ibua, you're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you very much. This is a real shout out to Ibua. A real shout out to the AKO Caine Prize. Well, I don't feel like there is much to say. Well, there's a lot more to say, but time is not on our side. And all I can say is that congratulations to you, Doreen, once more. And thank you very much, and congratulations to you, Ibua, and the team and everybody there, Kangere, Rachel, Kunihira, And I think we just keep our fingers crossed.
Yes.
And wait for the 26th.
Yes, wait for the 26th.
Third time lucky. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice time, and please do keep safe. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was David Kaiza and Doreen Baingana in conversation. Thank you for being with us in spite of the network challenges, and have a good day.